Say this to a man to build trust and open his heart. We're going to dive into this topic today. And I've got my regular Sabrina Rising in the house to talk about this. Yay, Sabrina.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Hello. Jonathan's
You
Universe.
are my most frequent guest.
I love being here. I love being here. I love the people that watch your show. I love all the comments and the questions that we get. And I love our conversations.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you, let's dive into this because I don't like to do a lot of ceremony on bios and stuff. So in our last conversation, I shared with you something coming out in my new book, and one of it's what I call the 3 stages or levels of commitment. And as I started to share with it, I talked about monogamy and exclusivity, and you didn't interrupt me, but you said, well, there's something even more important to that. Yeah. And that is leading with trust.
That's right.
You know, like that should be the first commitment you make to each other. I believe something along those lines you said. So can you kind of expand upon that a little bit more?
Yeah, good. Well, I mean, trust is a foundation of all healthy relationship, including the relationship we have with ourselves, right? And so, and most often, I mean, always, as you and I've discussed, whenever we attract somebody or are attracted to somebody, this, sort of magnetic pull towards each other means that we're more or less vibrating at the same frequency. We're more or less in the same place emotionally, physically, in terms of our beliefs and so on. We attract what we are, right? And so oftentimes when we attract this person who's in the same place as us, likely this person is going to have the same type of trust issues or trust, concerns, right? So we want to be able to come into the relationship and understanding that our need for trust is really about, first of all, how much do we trust ourselves, and how much is this person going to reflect back to us the need we have for trust, right? So another way of saying it is, I can only attract someone who's capable of the same level of trust that I am. Just like I can only attract someone who's capable of the same level of love that I am. Does that make sense?
Well, okay, there's a part of me that wants to completely challenge you. So will you let me be a little bit, this isn't, devil's advocate per se, but when we say that we attract at the same level, I mean, oftentimes I've witnessed people attract narcissists, liars, inconsiderate, like, is that really a mirror of us, or is there something else going on from that attraction perspective?
Okay, good. What's being mirrored is the wound.
Okay.
Not necessarily the behavior or the beliefs or the way of operating. I'm not necessarily attracting a narcissist because I'm a narcissist. I will attract a narcissist if I feel unworthy, unimportant, if I have deep beliefs around myself, my self-love, my self-care, that kind of thing. If I'm used to overgiving or overextending, or if I feel like I'm someone who has to save somebody or take care of another person, then I will most likely attract someone who mirrors that wound, right? So that's what I'm mirroring. We always end up in relationships where there's a perfect sort of dance between my issues and your issues, and they feed into each other, right? And this is where the conversation of trust really comes in, because we can only establish trust through transparency.
Okay.
That's the first step. The first step is transparency. Here's what I want. Here's what I'm looking for. These are my wounds. This is my past experience. This is the stuff I'm working on. This is what I would like to create with another person. Are you in? Right? Some very basic questions that
whoa.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I am okay. I would say most human beings might not even be aware of their wounds, aware of their issues that you just described. So when you said basic, I think for one, there might not be an awareness, but two, if you are aware of it, many people don't want to lead with it because it comes across as weak. It comes across possibly needy. It comes across less attractive. And I'm talking about, generally speaking, in the dating marketplace. I like how Chris Rock describes it. Many people show up as their ambassador of their best selves. In other words, not their true self, but the ambassador. Okay,
so my message to everybody, stop doing that. Stop doing that. Let's raise the level of consciousness around the dating game and the relationship dynamics that everyone is either in or creating or needs to clean up in order to be happy and healthy in your relationship. Okay, so transparency. So the first step of establishing trust in your relationship is stop and check in with yourself. And where do I trust myself?
Yeah.
Where am I being honest with myself? Where am I aware of my issues? What is it that I'm doing or don't do, or what is it that I would want to improve on? So entering into an honest relationship with self, I would say, is step one, right? Honest relationship with self. How much time do I really have to give to this? How much do I really have to offer? How much am I willing to invest? All of those sort of self-awareness questions that I think should be, in my universe. To me, this is mainstream information. And I hope that everybody sort of adopts this sort of rigorous self-honesty, so you can carefully gauge where you're at. Like, we can, we hear people complain about, my partner's not trustworthy, or I don't have trust in my relationship, or, I'm not sure if I can trust this person. That is all a byproduct of you not being 100% in a trusting relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Because if we're in a trusting relationship with self, I can spot a liar. I can feel when someone is not being truthful with me. I know when it's a genuine, there's a genuine overture of affection, or an invitation to date, or an invitation to get to know
but you're an oracle. You're a mystic. You read people, I mean, and again,
hold on a second. Okay, good. I'm glad you said that, because do you know how I got to be an oracle? By being clear, right? By being clear. Everybody has the ability to tune in to the more subtle energies and be able to detect the absence of truth or the presence of falsehood. However you want to look at it, we all have the capacity to detect energy and to feel into what's true and genuine and what's not. Okay. So, and this is like, the way that we do that is by being, learning to be clear with ourselves, being truthful with ourselves, and cleaning up our own lacks of integrity, our own energetic hygiene, if you will, so that when we meet people, we can say, okay, this person, and by doing that inner work to clear yourself, to establish relationship with self, you're going to be attracted to a different type of person than you have been in the past. You're going to be attracted. Go ahead.
So I want to jump in, and most people who have followed me for a while know that earlier this year, I was briefly in a relationship. And one of the things I did, I want to say it was around about the time that we were about to decide whether or not this was dating or exploring a relationship. And we actually had to sit down on a weekend, and I shared some of my core wounds, because I know it could be material to a relationship. So coming back to transparency, in my mind, transparency represents, if it's material to a relationship, it's material to another person's experience. It's almost like I know my own red flags. Like, in other words, I know my picadillos. Yes. I know my prickly.
You have to have your owner's manual ready to go when you're dating. You have to have your owner's manual ready to go. This is the guide. Okay, this is what it is to date me. Because of course, when we show up, as you said, the ambassador or the representative is there, and you want to put your best foot forward, and you want to be eloquent, and be able to make that connection, be seen in a positive way. Deep down, and even that, I would invite people to just drop that. Because you want to know that someone's attracted to the real you, the authentic you, like the genuine you, right? The I'm a hot mess you, or the I don't even know what I'm looking for. I'm just here because you were cute, or something. Like, just that level of honesty and transparency, I find is so refreshing, because it really sets the tone. You don't have to have it all figured out. That's the beauty about being in a transparent dialogue, is that you actually don't have to have it all figured out. You can just share transparently as things unfold and see where it goes, right?
I may have mentioned to you, I'm friends with Matt Kahn and Joy Kingsborough. Matt Kahn's a spiritual teacher, and I had them both on the channel last year. And it was interesting, because Matt says in an interview, when we first met, I just showed up as my inner 6-year-old. And I don't mean that the playful part, but the wounded parts, the real parts. In other words, and he said, we both showed up as our inner 6-year-old, that space within us that is authentic, that is the real us, that is that has fears and insecurities. And from that space, I believe, they eventually got married and they're building I believe, a substantial relationship together. But I like that idea as like showing up as your inner 6-year-old. And I'd be curious to hear what you think of that.
Well, I mean, as long as you're naming it and you're not behaving like a 6-year-old, it's not like, if you mean by showing up as your inner 6-year-old is like, I'm showing up like open and curious and playful and vulnerable and authentic and genuine. How children are not, they're just themselves, right? They're
exactly. That's what he meant by that.
Free, right? Then absolutely. I think that's a beautiful context for it, because there's an innocence to that desire to connect and to be and to share love and to share to share affinity with someone. There's an innocence to it. It's part of we're hardwired for that. We're hardwired for connection, right? So and we crave it so deeply. And I would argue that there's so much proof to this in our dating society that, our difficulty with connecting with other people or establishing deep and meaningful connections is really a reflection of how connected we are to ourselves.
Yeah. It's 11:11 on the clock. I had to point that out. So let's go. Okay. So this title is Say This to a Man to Build Trust, to Open His Heart. And since most of my audience are women, excuse me, and women tend to be more often than not the emotional containers of the relationship, or at least tend to be a little bit more of the leaders in that regard. How would you frame a conversation from an early standpoint of dating? How would you frame something to encourage, transparency? Because what we're really talking about when we talk about trust is that level of transparency. And how did you even lead with that? Well, I know with you and Bo, it probably was, natural for you guys. But what would you share with a woman right now who's watching to lead with?
I would say to honor yourself and to love yourself enough to show up just completely willing to tell the truth about yourself.
Okay.
And do the work to get over whatever you think you're going to be judged about or disapproved of, or, whatever fears you have around not being attractive or not being desirable or not being, someone wanting to be with you for whatever your reasons are. I would do the work to let go of all of those judgments you have of yourself so that you can show up in full acceptance of who you are. Because when we accept ourselves, it becomes easy to be transparent. It's like, if I accept that, hey, you know what, I struggled with an eating disorder when I was in my teens, right? In early 20s. I talk about it like it's past assault. I don't have any judgments about it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not hiding it. It's not something I don't want people to know. It's not something that I'm not, being vocal about. It's just something I share. I talk about it like no problem because I have no issues with it. And so I have no issue with it. So when I tell someone that, they have no issue with it. Does that make sense? That's what I mean.
By the way, is that a true statement for you?
It is a true statement.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were using that as an example.
No. Okay. I'm telling the truth. I'm advocating for the truth, so I'm telling the truth.
Okay. So it's interesting. Well, I'll share with you because I still have a wound centered around when I lost my high-end corporate job. I got wiped out in the market crash, and literally I had to start over kind of from a financial perspective in my late 40s, early 50s. And it's a wound for me. And now I am not unafraid to share it, but it's still a tender spot within me because I would like to be further along from a financial perspective, from a retirement perspective and that sort of thing. At the same time, I'm unafraid to talk about it, but it's still a wound.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you could share that. You could say, you can say exactly what you just said. Say, there's a thing that happened in my life, however many years ago, and it's still a tender spot for me. So I might have some sensitivity around, financial stuff or money stuff, or, how we're going to co-create life together from a financial perspective. I might have some sensitivity around that, but that's where it's coming from. And just so you know, I'm aware of it. Okay.
Yeah.
This is like as you say, ninja level transparency, right? Like, it's real transparency. It's like, hey, this is an issue for me. I don't have any wounds about it. I don't have any fear around food. I'm free, right?
Yeah.
Because I've done the work to heal. This is also many, 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 many years ago. So, but I can talk about it as part of my story, and part of my capacity to have empathy and understanding for those that are struggling, and my capacity to help those that are struggling, So again, the thing that you judge in yourself is going to get mirrored back to you in another person. And this is what I was talking about at the very beginning. We attract, that mirror image of, we talk about, establish trust from the beginning. But if you're not trusting yourself, to be fully honest, if you don't trust you're lovable, if you don't trust that you are whole, perfect, and complete exactly as you are, and that whatever you've been through is just part of your story, it doesn't define you. It just, it's just part of what your experience has been. If we can't make peace with ourselves, then it becomes difficult to be transparent. Right? It's hard to talk about yourself when you are holding yourself in judgment, holding yourself, in harsh criticism about some part of your story.
Well, at the same time, we also, let's be real, or at least my perception is, actually doing personal development, self-help, spiritual work, introspection work, therapy is still not mainstream. I mean, it is not the vast majority of the population, number one. Number two, and I think this is where it gets amplified, particularly for my audience that's midlife, is that relationships trigger our stuff, and God forbid you've had and when I say it this way, God forbid, but if you've had multiple relationships where there was a hurt, a heartbreak, a wound that happened from it, you could be in your mid 50s having 3 or 5 relationships that have hurt in your past that still may not be healed. And yet still, you talked about, we are hardwired for relationships. So how do we navigate that when we're still working on healing, but may not, that we might get triggered, like I was talking about within my wound?
You can expect to be triggered. If you're going to commit fully to a relationship and you're going to allow yourself to form an emotional bond with someone, you can expect to be triggered.
Okay.
It's like saying, I want to fall in love without getting my heart broken. It's impossible. You have to be willing to go through that. You have to be willing to be triggered. You have to be willing to get your wounds poked, and face yourself. Otherwise, you're not in it. You're not in the relationship if you're not being triggered, if you're not feeling your wounds, if you're not, allowing yourself to re-experience the pain of childhood. It's very simple. We come into this human experience. We get conditioned in early childhood. A set of limiting beliefs gets ingrained and it shapes our identity. We have wounds that we haven't fully processed, perhaps even, severe trauma, depending on your childhood. And then this is what we play out. The relationship you had in your childhood, whatever was modeled for you, you're going to play that out over and over and over again in all your relationships until you say, stop. I don't want to change this story. Right.
Yeah. By the way, do you see that comment there?
What is the comment says? What are your thoughts that relationships are to help us heal? Absolutely. Relationships are probably the most essential, the most effective, the most accelerated containers for healing, if you look at them from that perspective,
Okay, well, I want to play with this because I've been thinking a lot about this even in my own life, because right now I am not in a relationship and I feel like I'm going through a gigantic metamorphosis in my life. I'm facing some fears. I'm opening my heart, from a place that has been wounded. So I feel like I'm doing a lot of work. So do we do more work in relationship?
It's different work. It's different work.
Okay.
It's different work.
Expand upon that.
Yeah, it's different work because when you're alone, you're facing all the stuff that comes up around being alone. Right. Yeah. And so loss of connection, maybe you're dealing with a little bit of loneliness. Maybe you're thinking about, your life and where you want to be and who you want to share it with. And, it's different. There's just a different set of concerns. When you're in partnership, now your life has changed, right? Yeah. So now you have another set of concerns. You're doing different work. Now, when a partner comes into your life, we're looking at emotional dependency. We're looking at codependency in particular. Yeah. looking at conflict resolution. We're looking at sharing space and, sharing finances, perhaps. We're looking at, sharing values. So when you're in relationship, the texture of your concerns and, the things that you're working on takes on a whole new form, right? It's just different work. It's
Yeah,
totally
it's kind of interesting because on one hand, I'll be candid with you, being by yourself, I don't have to worry about, someone else's needs. I don't have to worry about conflict resolution. I don't have to worry about like finances. It's all just my container. And I think I wondered, I will be candid with you, Sabrina.
yeah,
I'm wondering if we're reaching a new evolution
yeah.
within humanity where the next evolution is actually being totally, like when you said earlier, we have a need to be with people. I'm wondering if we're going through a new evolution around really learning to love our own company and not needing it from a social structure perspective.
Oh, well, and I appreciate that. This could turn into a very long philosophical argument. I think that the idea, when you say needing others, I think that's what's evolving.
Okay.
So I don't feel like I need someone in my life, but I do have a desire for genuine, authentic connection to create a shared reality with another person. And I think that is part of being human.
Yeah.
As long as we're human, we're going to have a desire for connection.
Yeah. And certainly.
Hold on. As long as we're wounded, we're going to have a deep need for dependency.
Oh, okay.
And there's a big distinction there. Okay. So I have a deep desire for authentic, genuine connection with a person who shares my values, which is a great affirmation, by the way, for anybody watching. I am creating deep and meaningful relationships with those who share my values. That's a good affirmation. Or if I haven't done my inner child work, guess what? I have a deep, deep need for dependency. My partner becomes my parent, right? What happens if I don't do inner child work? If I go to a relationship with all of my stuff sort of not really figured out, you know? And here's the thing, as long as we are projecting our needs onto our partners, we talk about NVC, we talk about getting our needs met, we talk about, advocating for ourselves and so on. But as long as we're making our partners responsible for our needs, responsible for our emotional wellness, if you will, then we're not really approaching relationship from a place of self-responsibility. And we can be sure to be dissatisfied or eventually, get our hearts broken. Right?
Yeah. By the way, really quickly, Sabrina mentioned NVC, and what that stands for is nonviolent communication. There's a book called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Actually, I think it should have been titled Compassionate Communication, because that's really what it is. But we have a propensity to talk to each other, sometimes in a combative way. Okay, we're going to take questions in a moment. But before we do, I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question for Sabrina or myself, there's a little chat box in the corner. Write the word question, then post the question thereafter. Or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. There's a little $sign in the chat box. All the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Aslay. That's a picture of him there with his brother, Colin. He's my son who passed away. God, it's almost coming up on 7 years. And in his honor, we donate to causes like the Hoffman Process, Insight Institute, and scholarships to coaching as well. And our goal is $50 tonight, so we'd appreciate some love. And just really quickly, everybody, and I'll remind everyone again, Sabrina is a mystic, a psychic. So if you actually want to have a little reading from her and you want to be live, I'm going to post a link. You can join us live and have a conversation with us. That's in the chat box right now. Just click that link. It'll take you to the studio and we can have a chat together. So
yes, come and join us. I want to talk to you.
So Sassy wrote, totally relate with you, Sabrina. I'm solid with myself. I don't lovingly worry about what others will think. That's on them, not me. No stress on my shoulders. Everything must be from the start.
Yes, everything must start from within. Absolutely, Sassy, 100%. Good for you. This is what we want. We want this consciousness to be mainstream. We want more and more women, especially when I know it's women watching your show, to just be like, I'm okay with myself. I love and accept myself exactly as I am. another good affirmation. I love and accept myself exactly as I am. Like, do the work so that you can look at yourself and your life in the mirror and just feel love, right? Because that's what you're going to attract into your life. The
Yeah.
relationship you have with self is the relationship you have with others. I cannot stress this enough. And we are still, there's such a big segment of the population going into relationships going, are you going to love me? Are you going to love me? Are you going to love me? Are you going to meet my needs? Are you going to help? Are you going to help me out of my pain? Are
Well,
you going
there's also, they're going into, sorry to interrupt, but they're also going in a relationship. And I jokingly do this, and it's meant to be humorous, but they have duct tape over their mouth.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is there's a fear to speak your truth with someone, to be transparent, because there's a fear of rejection and abandonment. I think the point that you're making is when we trust ourselves, we're never going to be abandoned or rejected.
Right, 100%. And here's the thing, just to give some grace and compassion for those that are really struggling with this concept, when you were a little kid, your mom probably, or your dad probably told you to stop crying. Probably told you that that's enough. It's, I don't want to hear it anymore. Go to your room, snap out of it, shake it off, whatever the messaging was, to just stuff down your emotions. So when you went to your parents as a little child and said, I have all these big feelings and I don't know what to do with them and I'm so uncomfortable, and your parents said, parents are triggered and saying, oh, I don't know how to handle these uncomfortable feelings because it's triggering my unhealed wound. So please stop doing that so I can feel more comfortable. Yeah. You learned, this is the messaging you learned. And now you're an adult trying to be in loving partnership saying, it's not safe for me to share big feelings. It's not safe, because we don't unlearn this until we actually do the inner work and say, wow, I never had the space to talk about what I was feeling or felt safe to talk about what I was feeling. No one asked me. Nobody cared. So many people, especially when we do, coaching, so many people have no idea what their needs are because we don't spend the time to really think about it. No one's ever asked us, what do you need?
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Right. And so we have to be willing to sit down. And for those of you watching live or watching the replay, like take a moment to make a list of all your needs. What are my needs? Right.
There's my list. It's messy, but that's my list.
Yeah. Make connection, communication, transparency, honesty, affection.
Reciprocity is my top one.
I know it's my.
By the way, really quickly, I want to share with you and everybody. So I grew up in an era where there was no video cameras or anything like that. And my father had an 8mm film, right? And there was a time, and I saw this I'm in my 50s, I watched this film of my family and I at a park. And it was back then we used to get together with other families, and it would be like a Sunday barbecue, but it was for our community. And I happen to be Turkish. It was the Turkish community of such and such that get together. And I'm 4 years old, and I see all the kids running around, and I'm in a playpen at 4 years old, like the kind of playpen that looks like a prison bars, And I'm holding the bars like this and looking where everybody is playing, and I'm being excluded. And I asked my mom about it, and she said, well, when you were younger, you were so hard to manage. I used to just put you in your playpen because I didn't know how to handle you, kind of thing. I'm cliff noting it. Mind you, there are other kids running around. Like, this is the time that a kid should run around. So fast forward, when my oldest son was about 4 years old, we would go to like birthday parties and stuff like that. And he used to take off his clothes. Like, he was naked at birthday parties. He just ran around naked. And I mean, as a parent, it was radically embarrassing.
Yeah.
I remembered that I was scolded for being myself.
You were so suppressed. Yeah.
I was, and I said, it was embarrassing, but I'm like, he's just being himself,
So there's so much I want to say about you behind bars at 4 years old and your mom putting you there because she couldn't handle you. There's so much I want to say about that, and about like sort of the the wall between you and getting your needs met, your need for
Yeah.
self-expression, your need for attention, your need for freedom, and so on,
Yeah.
So, and it's important to look at events like this. Like, this is even just something like that. It's important to look at an event like that and say, how did that affect me emotionally? What belief? Sabrina's amazing. I said everything. Oh, thank you, Dawn. Come for some coaching. So look at those events and say, okay, has this affecting me emotionally? What beliefs have I created as a result of this? Like, how am
I
I
processed the hell out of that one. I mean, it's kind of interesting that there was a point in my life where I was afraid to be myself, if you will. I mean, be my authentic self. Now, I recognize that for a long time, I operated from a very selfish, egoic place, in my 20s. I mean, I was very self-centric. And I look back now and I'm not proud of that, but that was my rebellion to being stuffed as a child, if you will, that I kind of went the other direction and became almost too selfish because I wasn't having my needs met when I was younger. So,
and look at it from the perspective of you trying to get your needs met.
Yeah.
Yourself as ego. First of all, the nature of being human is egocentric. That's the nature of being human.
Yeah, but I'm not proud of the fact that, and particularly this came about women and sex and that sort of thing. I mean, I could blame it on, men being men kind of thing, but I only cared about my own needs. I didn't come at it from a place of my actions have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think I've evolved, and recognizing that the minute you engage with another person, your actions, can have repercussions if you're operating from a self-centric place.
Yeah,
I believe, anyway.
For sure. But if you are in you want to look at like the epitome of self-centered, is the narcissist, right? We talk about the narcissist. There's all this, these labels around narcissistic behavior. And the fact of the matter is the narcissist is a deeply wounded person.
Yes.
Is a deeply wounded, deeply insecure person who is, has a chronic history of unmet needs. Right. And so like you, when you're not getting your needs met, you're like, okay, I have to go into extreme survival mode to ensure that I'm getting my need for affection, connection, and support met. And it's just never enough because you hadn't healed the wound, right, from your relationship with your mom. Until we actually heal the wound, we're going to grasp for whatever it is that we can grasp for, as destructive as it might be, because we're just not aware of our needs. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally makes sense. Well,
this is important as we talk about nonviolent communication. When we're not conscious of our needs, the strategies that we will create to get those needs met will almost always be destructive.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're not conscious that you have a need for, connection and community and transparency and love, let's say love is not really a need, it's a feeling, but let's say just companionship. Okay. Yeah. So if you're not aware of that, you're not aware of those needs, you're kind of lying to yourself about getting those needs met, you're going to create destructive strategies to get those needs met. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
And how am I going to...
We have some questions that came in.
Oh, sure.
RM Bells has just written, I live with my ex-husband and I don't see an end in sight in that aspect. I'd like some guidance on how to deal with a trauma bond. Ooh.
Sure. I mean, I would love to guide you. So there, on some level, living with your ex-husband is meeting a need. That's the only reason why you're doing it. That's the only reason why any human being ever does anything is to meet a need. Even if there's a conscious part of you and a more enlightened part of you that says this is something that is not good for me. Right. Yeah. We know it's not good for us, but it's meeting a deeper need. Perhaps there's a financial security there, which is what I'm sensing, or there is a sort of an unwillingness to let each other go. Trauma bonds are really just mirrors to the wounds that we have that need healing. Yeah. It's not a trauma bond is not about creating loving, long-term sustainable relationship. It's impossible to create a loving, long-term sustainable relationship with someone that you have a trauma bond with unless you're both working on your trauma. Okay. So the trauma bond says, I'll hold on to you or I promise not to wake you up if you promise to let me stay asleep, right? That's the
Yeah.
bond, right? It's like, well, let's just stay in each other's wounds,
Okay.
and I'll continue enabling you and you'll continue enabling me, and these two people are enabling each other, right? So the first step is to get honest with yourself about what this living with your ex-husband is actually, what need that's actually meeting for you.
Yeah.
And then doing the work you need to do to untangle yourself from this situation. Okay. To see that there is a part of you that wants sovereignty, or you wouldn't have asked the question. You wouldn't be here. You want sovereignty. You want freedom. You want independence. Actually, autonomy is scientifically proven as being one of the highest needs in terms of human needs, in terms of our need for autonomy is our greatest need as human beings. So the freedom to
That
come
makes
and go,
sense.
the freedom to choose, right? The freedom to be able to do what we want with our time and money, that kind of thing. So autonomy is a very high valued need. So your need for autonomy is not being met, and that can be very exhausting. So you have to I would invite you to make a list of all the needs that are being met by living with your ex-husband, and all the needs that are being unmet, and it's going to astound you. The list of the unmet needs is going to be so much bigger. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you got to make a decision, right? We have to make a decision. We don't come out of destructive behavior or destructive choices or circumstances, by visualizing, right? We have to actually make a decision and take an action.
Yeah.
Right? So decision would be like, I'm going to give myself a month or 2 months or 3 months to look for a new place to live, right? I'm going to start advocating for the boundaries that I need. I'm going to start advocating for the space that I require. And if you're really stuck and you feel like you don't have the energy or the strength to take these steps, you need guidance. You need a guide, right? So many of us, especially when I coach people, they're like, I never would have had the courage to do this without help, without a guy, without somebody holding space for me, without somebody me. And
by the
when
way, something occurs to me. Please forgive me for interrupting. When we reach a point in someone's in our life, I even though I'm divorced and I've been divorced much longer than I was married. But my ex-wife is family to me. Like, we're family to each other.
Yeah.
And we treat each other that way. And I'm just curious with RM Bells. I wonder if there's an element that he feels like family to you. And that might be one need that's getting met, is that familiarity, that, prior consistency, all those things that were alive, before you got divorced. Mm-hmm. But I think what happens when you've been in a long enough timeline with someone, mm-hmm. The energy shifts. I'm just curious, and RM Bells, if there's anything in there that resonates, I'd like to hear. Certainly with what Sabrina said as well.
I think that that we can become accustomed and familiar with any type of situation. We can, we know people who stay in long-term relationships way longer than it's healthy to stay in those relationships, even when they're being abused, right? Because this becomes a new normal, right? It becomes something that you're used to. It becomes something that is, and that normal is usually a reflection of whatever emotional set point was established in childhood in your caregiving environment, right? So that inner chaos feels normal. That trauma bond feels normal. I mean, RM Bells might be in a caregiver situation where she feels like she can't let go, or, there's something she's getting and there's something he's getting, and she can't really just kind of rip the Band-Aid off, right? So that, it takes a tremendous amount of courage and a tremendous amount of willingness to say, I have to quit this. I've got to quit this. I've got to move on to something else. I'm better off living whatever in a different type of place, or perhaps a smaller place or more modest place, if I can, as long as I have my sovereignty. So my advice to RM Bells would be, choose your personal sovereignty. To choose.
And I do like that idea. Create that list of what needs are being met, and then create the list of what needs are not being met. All right, Rhonda's in the house and she has a question.
Rhonda. Oh, nice.
What's your point of view about couples games to get to know a potential partner?
I think it's great. Like Q&A type of, I think that's very playful, as long as it's done within the context of play, right? Like it's just it can be a very sweet, very, lighthearted. There you go. Lighthearted.
Have you ever done these games with Bo?
No, I haven't. But those are fun. what a great gift idea too,
I think
Yeah.
you and Bo, by the way, everyone, Sabrina's engaged. Um, and to a great guy named Bo. Oh, I had them on the channel once before. I
Yeah.
forgot I had you two on.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm sure you guys, your life is like a word game with each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's a vortex for sure. It's a
Yeah.
vortex for sure. We're very blessed. We both do a lot of inner work, and we both healed a lot of our past relationship issues and trauma and stuff from childhood. And it comes up all the time, but we give each other space, and it makes it deepens the trust because we're so transparent.
Oh, well, would you be open to sharing something that's not too sensitive that maybe happened between you guys? And you don't have to answer that.
No, I mean, I wish I had some dirt for you. I really don't. Like we're very, like we're when stuff comes up and it's very minimal. When stuff comes up, perhaps like we have 3 kids together. Okay, I can
Yeah.
share this. I have a biological daughter. He has twins, and so we're a blended family. So we basically have 3 8-year-olds running around the house.
Yeah.
It can be very difficult for us to have quality time and to make
Yeah.
time for each other because we're exhausted, right? And so it's a lot of energy in the house to manage. And so, oftentimes, like, this is something we'll talk about, I'll communicate, that, I have a need for connection and for, for a date night or things like that, but I, for 95% of the time we use NVC with each other, and it just works, because we're genuinely interested in helping each other get our needs met. Right. And so we have regular struggles like, that any couple would, especially in our situation, but we talk about it like, without blaming and attacking each other.
Do you guys do like relationship check-ins?
Yeah. I mean, not in a formal way. It's a constant ongoing. I mean, it really does feel like an ongoing therapy session sometimes. Like ongoing, like, hey, I was feeling this, like, for example, this morning, Bo shared, like, hey, I'm doing some breath work, and then I'm going to be doing journaling, and I want to go inward for a little bit. So I'm really not open to talking. And he just like lovingly, I love you. Like, just like, in other words, don't talk to me. I want quiet time for the next however many hours, And I was like, great. Wonderful. Yeah, like I'm not like sitting here hurt, or like going like, oh, he doesn't want to talk, like, waiting for the time that I can talk to him. It's like, beautiful. Thank you for setting a beautiful boundary and for asking for space. You know what I mean? And so, and then when I came downstairs later, he's like, how did you feel receiving that text? I'm like, perfect. So it's, what I mean? So like, it's just a matter of learning to communicate with each other and learning like, hey, this person is not in service to my needs.
Yeah.
Like, it's important for women and for men as well to remember that you're in a relationship with an independent, autonomous soul who has a different set of needs throughout the day, who may not always want what you want or care about what you care about or be into whatever it is you're into. Right. And so we have to be able to give each other space and say, okay, this is what you're getting your needs met. I'm getting my needs met. And that dance of creating structures in your relationship where both people are getting their needs met is what makes a relationship sustainable.
Okay, you said something that I'm going to highlight, but I want to just give props to RM Bell. She just gave us a $10 super sticker. Thank you, Sabrina, for the love. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
So you said in service to each other's needs. I want you to highlight that again. And I want to spend the balance of this conversation talking about the real purpose of a relationship. Okay. When we think about, like, when we're in our 20s and 30s, the purpose oftentimes is to make babies and raise a family. I mean,
we're not in that era anymore of humanity. Where you're thinking about owning land together and you're thinking about co-creating, offspring, and you're thinking about, like, we're not in that era of humanity anymore. We've evolved, right? We're all independent humans. We're not here necessarily to extend our family legacy or to create something that you can pass down to your children. Like, we've evolved as humans. So the need for marriage and the need for partnership has evolved over time as well. Now it's really about connection. It's just about connection and shared values and supporting each other and getting your needs met. So I don't make you responsible for my needs. You're not in service to my needs, but you're accountable to supporting me in helping me get my own needs met. You see that
Ooh,
subtle shift? Okay.
yeah,
Well, here's the thing. I go to my partner, I go to Bo and I say, look, I'm in a lot of pain. I'm in a lot of pain. And I'm not expecting him to fix me, but
yeah.
I do expect him to hold my hand while I fix myself.
Okay.
That's the difference, right? It's like, I don't need anything from you. And this is where it gets very sticky and messy in couple situations, because we get let's say, for example, your partner is, I don't know, texting with a member of the opposite sex, texting with a female, your male partner is texting with a female, and that triggers something in you, right?
Yeah.
And so we go to the partner and our request is that they stop the behavior, right? Stop
Yeah.
doing this thing that's triggering me. Stop upsetting me in this way. That's not where the healing happens. Interdependence. Exactly. What a beautiful term.
Yeah.
That's not where the healing happens. The healing happens when you sit down and you go, I have a lot of uncomfortable feelings coming up about this. I don't like these feelings. I wish I didn't have these feelings. Will you help me work through these feelings so I can stop suffering? Will you hold my hand while I, give myself empathy? Will you hear me out so that I can work through these triggers and this insecurity so I can feel better about your relationship with this person or whatever it is that's happening with this person? Does that make sense? So it's that kind of thing. It's like we're holding each other, we're holding space for each other, but we're not saving each other.
Yeah. So I'm a little not stuck, but I want to really hyper focus on being of service to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I really, now just hearing you say that made me think that again, for midlife based relationships, I mean, again, that don't have that survival basic kind of need that we talked about before, I think ultimately when this conversation started with, the base commitment you make to one another is transparency and trust, right? Yeah. But at the same time, it's really the awareness, like, look, I'm in this relationship to get my needs met, but also be a part of helping you get your needs met. I'm in service to that from a conscious point of view, instead of the ambivalent point of view many people enter into relationships. And today, oftentimes it's hyper focused on attraction, entertainment, romance, and physical connection without the real meat of a relationship, which is the emotional part of their relationship.
100%, 100%. And yet having said that, we're not responsible for each other's pain. We're just not. We're not responsible for each other's pain, being of service to each other. Right. So you can be in service to helping each other get your personal needs met, but you're not responsible for each other's feelings. Yeah. And you're not responsible for each other's needs. Does that make sense? We have to stay self-responsible and autonomous in our relationships. My partner and I don't always agree. We don't always see the same eye to eye on the same thing, perhaps, or, of course, I mean this in general. If you are not communicating what your need is, your partner has no way of knowing.
Yeah. I have a friend, really quickly.
Yeah.
I got something to share, but Dawn wants to know, how do I donate? Dawn, there's a little $ in the chat box. Just click that and you can donate. It's interesting. You just shared something. It reminds me of a friend of mine. He said, he's been married for years, and he goes, my wife expects me to be a mind reader, and she'll come up like 3 months later, bringing up something that came up that she never shared what it was. And now expects him to fix it.
Yeah.
When he never knew about it.
And that's the thing. We talked about transparency, bringing it back to the original topic, right? Like, share the thing that's triggering you in the moment. Don't wait. Yeah. So don't wait till something happened 2 months ago or 3 months ago. Or this is one thing that really eradicates trust in a relationship, by the way. If you've been holding on to a resentment, or you've been holding on to something that happened that's bothering you, it's been festering because you don't have the courage to bring it up because you're afraid of love being withheld from you or withdrawn from you, or you're afraid of conflict, and whatever the deal is, whatever this again is from childhood. Okay. When, remember that thing you did, well, it'll usually come out in an argument, you will get triggered, and then all of a sudden all the truth comes out, right? This is what happens typically in partnerships where there's a lack of awareness around what your needs are and a lack of consistent daily transparency about what's really going on, So all of a sudden the truth comes out. Now we hear things, we're like, goodness, you've been holding on to that for how long, right? So this eradicates trust. Now I don't know if you're telling me the truth about things in the moment when you say you're okay. I don't know
Yeah.
if you're telling me the whole story, right? Do I have to constantly check in with you to make sure that you're being fully transparent with me? This is not, it's not a conscious way of operating in relationships. What is Sadie saying? I love that. And if your partner truly loves and respects you, they will hold space for you. Absolutely. They will.
Yeah.
And this, what a great way to find out if you're with the right person, right? Like,
Yeah.
being able to share the truth of whatever's coming up for you transparently in the moment, and asking for support, asking for your partner to hold space for you while you actively and proactively are attempting to get your own needs met, is a great way to find out if you're with the right person.
It's interesting, the concept of holding space. When I say that, it's interesting. I look back in my life, and when someone was sharing something or maybe was upset with me about something, I immediately would get defensive. It was my natural response to defend myself because I felt attacked in that moment. And it's taken me a long time to recognize, or just even well, certainly being a coach has taught me to hold space because there's nothing going on between my client and I. But in relationship with people, it's learning to be in that space of neutral, to just listen. Like this wasn't something I learned overnight. This is something I had to practice over and over and over again.
And so how easy or how difficult is it to listen when you're being blamed and vilified and attacked because of the pain that your partner is in? It's impossible. We cannot hold space if we're busy being defensive.
Well, I recognize now, and I would say the 4 agreements has been a big help to me, is to recognize that oftentimes when that's happened, most of the time it's a projection of what's going on, and the unneed met isn't being discussed. It's all the blame going on. And
well, like that's why we want to illuminate the past in nonviolent communication and get people tuned in with their needs, right? Figure out what your needs are and say, okay, here's the deeper need. If I'm insecure because of something is happening in my relationship, or if I'm feeling triggered, it's not the thing that needs to change. It's not the trigger that needs to go away. The trigger is the medicine.
Yeah.
Right. This is what's showing me. It's pointing to my unmet need. Right. So the trigger is telling me that there's a deeper need that's not being met.
So I want to share something with you. In my most recent brief relationship, I was struggling with mixed feelings. Like I had a feeling of care, but a feeling of doubt, and a feeling of care and a feeling of doubt. I think that was and I recognize that now I look back, I acted with mixed messages, mixed signals, because I had conflicting feelings. And I was torn, and I did my best to be transparent, by the way.
That was going to be my next question. Were you transparent about being torn?
As close to being to the extent that I was aware within myself. Yeah. And I did my best to be, transparent. But I also look back now, I must have looked like a Pachinko ball because I was all over the map. And part of that was my previous relationship emotions were creeping in, and some of my personal life was creeping in. So it's interesting because I think sometimes our emotions can be all over the map.
Right. Okay. Yes, this is true. But a conscious person who's committed to their taking personal responsibility, you know that you're managing your energy, because your energy affects everything and everyone in your life. So for everybody watching, yourself, you included, Jonathan, me included, it's really important to gauge, okay, where are my feelings at, and to be as transparent as you can, even if you don't know how to explain it. Like in your case, Jonathan, I have ambivalence around this relationship. I'm not all in. Yeah. There's something that's holding me back from being all in. And that's just where I'm at emotionally. I can't exactly put my finger on why, but this is where I'm at. You have 2 options. You can hang in there with me until I get clear, or you can choose to eject yourself from this relationship because I'm not all in. It's not a full body yes for me. Right. And so the other person now is responsible to say, you know what? I don't want to be with someone who isn't 100,000% sure that I'm the right person. I don't really want to stick around for an extended, potentially waiting period for me to get rejected. Right. So does that make sense? We're all self-responsible. And in the vein of self-responsibility, it's just about communicating honestly where you are. And if it's not okay that you have these ambivalent feelings, the other person doesn't have to stick around for that.
No, and that's kind of eventually what ended up happening. And I did my best to be transparent, but my point in bringing up this share is it's interesting when you have mixed feelings, when you have uncertainty and you can't put your finger on it. Sometimes it could just be your intuition talking to you or something else.
You need to create a mental altar to your feelings. Human beings do this. We need to contextualize everything that we're feeling all the time. We got to give it a value. We got to name it. We got to attach it to something. We got to give it a whole storyline. You don't need to. In those moments when you're not sure, like when there's doubt, it's because you're trying to use your mind to make sense of what's actually going on. If I would just simply, this is intuition basics 101. If you want to find out if it's a yes or a no, trust your body. Your first response is always in the gut. The gut is the first mind, as they say. It's always in the gut, and your body will tell you those feelings of like, if it's not a full body yes, it's no. And that should be the standard for everybody. Everybody should be in relationships or situations or jobs or, circumstances in their lives where it feels like this is a full body yes for me. We all deserve that. Give yourself that standard of being in a full body yes situation. If there's I'm not sure, I'm doubting, then it doesn't make the cut. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. And to the extent that it was another... And thankfully, we came to a nice resolution between the two of us, and that sort of thing. So I reckon, and that's part of the process too. Dating is a process of seeing if you're a fit for one another. Not everybody is a fit, and that's why why it's called dating.
And it can be a challenge to, reject a person just on a feeling.
Yeah.
We want to give reasons. We want to give explanations. The only reason we want to do that is because we want to save people from feeling pain, or we want to save people from their experience of sadness or their feelings of rejection. We're not serving others by doing that. You know. Hi, Joe Daisy. I have learned to not doubt my intuition. Beautiful. Yeah, your intuition.
Goes on to say you feel tense when it's not right.
That's right. Your cells will contract.
Yeah.
Will contract when it's not right. And it's very important for those of you that are following your intuition, that you're in a clear, we come to intuitive work with a sound mind and a sound body, right? So you got to be clear, open channel so you can really feel into the truth of what's happening in the moment.
So we're coming up on the hour, my dear.
I feel like we've been talking for 5 minutes.
I know. Well, that's the way it is with you and I. By the way, folks, we're dear friends. We talk to each other on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I shared with everybody, you have your YouTube channel. I'm going to post a link below so you can connect to Sabrina's YouTube channel. She has her Oracle hours on Wednesdays. She has her Soul Sunday. Is it?
Soul sessions on Sunday night.
Soul sessions on Sunday. You can actually be live with Sabrina if you click the link. Or you can ask questions just like you do here. Sabrina is my go-to coach when I need help. In fact, she's part of my committee of any new relationship in my life has to pass the Sabrina test.
Yes, I'm on the angel team. I'm on the angel team.
She's on my angel team. And I do recommend checking out her work if you want to do some deeper inner work to heal those childhood wounds and or adult traumas. I highly recommend checking her out. She's helped me immensely. Huh?
Yeah, I said I highly recommend Jonathan, for anyone who's looking for coaching and dating and relationship advice and mentorship. I mean, you hold a really beautiful space, especially for women who are dealing with, the wounds in the masculine, their father wounds and things like that. I think it's very important to have good, clean, masculine energy holding space for you. And you provide that, Jonathan. And I feel very happy to share that with people.
Thank you. I think of myself as everybody's big brother.
100%. What is space to heal, for sure.
Rhonda says, thank you, Jonathan. Sabrina.
Thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
Joe Daisy says, J.A., you brought me to Sabrina, and I thank you so much.
We love having you. Thank you
so again, if you want to connect with Sabrina, there's links below. Any parting words as we get ready to wrap up?
Yeah, I really, again, let's just talk about transparency and
Yeah.
trust, building trust with self,
Yeah.
right? And so look at those little ways in which you don't trust yourself. It could be anything, start by keeping your word to yourself, start by doing the things you say you're going to do, by showing up for yourself every day so you can strengthen your trust bond with you. And that once that trust bond with you is super solid, you'll be able to attract other people that are just as trustworthy. You'll be less doubtful, less afraid of not getting that need for trust met because you're in a trusting place with yourself. So the relationship with self is the relationship we have with other people. Hi, Bo.
Sabrina's love is on the line. All right, folks. Well, this would be a great place to wrap up. Sabrina, can I just reach in the camera and give you a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for being right
Receiving yours as well.
Sending love to everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Jonathan, thank you so much. I love being here.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank Joe Daisy and Roller Girl and Bo and RM Bells and Melt and Rhonda and Shalom. Oh God, I'm terrible with names. Sassy, Sadie, Trista Marie, Sadie Flint, Dawn. Everybody was on. Certainly everyone that donated. We also want to give props to RM Bells for donating tonight. Big hugs to you all. Wishing you all a super duper wonderful evening. Bye now. Bye-bye.